The morning light hadn't even reached the kitchen window yet when the water started running. That sound, that single, simple sound, was enough to change everything. He was orange, small enough to fit in two cupped hands, and still carried the faint smell of the outdoors on his fur. 3 days ago he'd been found shivering behind a row of trash cans, alone, too weak to even cry out properly. Now he was here, warm, fed, safe, or at least as safe as a frightened kitten could understand safety to be. But he didn't know that yet, not really. His ears pinned back the moment the faucet turned on. His whole body went stiff. Those wide amber eyes darted toward the sound, then toward the door, then toward the only thing in the room that felt familiar, the hands holding him, his tiny claws pressed into skin, not to hurt, just to hold on. Like letting go might mean disappearing. He had survived cold nights. He had survived hunger. He had survived being utterly alone in a world too big for something his size. But this rushing water, this open air, this unfamiliar routine, this was new. And new, to a kitten who had already lost so much, meant danger. His human noticed the trembling first, then the shallow, fast-breathing, little puffs of air against a cupped palm. A voice, low and steady, broke the silence. "Hey, little guy, it's okay." The kitten didn't understand the words, but he understood the tone. He'd been hearing it for 3 days now, soft, unhurried, nothing like the sharp sounds of the street. Every time that voice spoke, something in his chest loosened, just slightly. Still, his paws stayed locked around the fingers holding him. Steam rose gently from the water in the sink. A towel sat folded nearby, already warmed, waiting. Everything had been prepared with care. The temperature tested twice. The room kept quiet. No sudden movements. This wasn't going to be rushed. But the kitten couldn't know any of that. All he knew was the sound and the fear that came with it. His whole small body seemed to ask a silent question. What is this? Why is this happening? Am I in danger? His human lowered a hand slowly, letting him see it coming, letting him choose. There was no grabbing, no forcing, just patience. And then something happened that surprised even the person holding him. The kitten looked up, not away, not down, up, directly into the eyes of the human he barely knew. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The water kept running softly in the background. The kitten's ears, still low, twitched once. His tiny chest rose and fell, fast at first, then a little slower, and then impossibly he relaxed. Not completely, not all at once, but enough that his claws loosened their grip, enough that his shoulders dropped just slightly, enough that for one fragile second, the fear in his eyes softened into something closer to trust. The water was still running, the bath hadn't even started, and yet something had already shifted between them. His human lifted him gently, closer to the warm water, whispering the same soft words on repeat. "I've got you. I'm not going anywhere." The kitten's tail curled tightly around his own body, a small instinctive shield. But he didn't fight. He didn't cry out. He simply watched, wide-eyed, as the water inched closer. Whatever came next, he had already decided one thing. He wasn't going to face it alone. By now the fear had mostly drained out of him. What remained was something quieter, something that hadn't been there when the water first started running. A strange, unfamiliar calm settling into his small body, one breath at a time. The bath continued, gentle and unhurried. His human's hands moved with practiced care, washing away the dirt that had clung to his fur for days. Dirt from alleyways, from hiding spots, from a life spent surviving rather than living. With every pass of warm water, another trace of that old hard life disappeared. He watched it happen. He watched all of it. His wide amber eyes tracked every movement, the careful way fingers worked around his tiny paws, the softness in how his belly was cleaned, the constant, steady presence of a voice that never once turned sharp or impatient. He didn't try to run. Not when the water moved to his back legs, not when it touched the sensitive skin near his ears, not even when a gentle stream ran down the length of his tail, the one part of him that still remembered how to flinch on instinct. For a creature this small, this trust was enormous. Kittens his age, kittens who had lived through what he'd lived through, were not supposed to sit still for this. They were supposed to fight, to bolt, to claw their way free the moment fear crept in. That was survival. That was instinct. But he didn't fight. He simply watched, and trusted, and let himself be helped. At one point, almost without meaning to, his eyes began to close, not from fear this time, not from exhaustion either, from something closer to safety. His small body, once rigid with tension, had gone soft and pliant in his human's hands. His breathing had slowed to something calm and even, and for a few long seconds, the frightened kitten who had clung so desperately to a stranger's fingers just minutes before now, simply rested, eyes closed, muscles loose, utterly vulnerable. It was such a small thing to witness, a kitten closing his eyes during a bath, and yet it carried the weight of everything he'd been through, every cold night, every empty stomach, every moment of being alone in a world that had given him no reason to trust anyone. And now, here he was, choosing to let his guard down completely. Not because he understood the word safe, but because his body had finally started to believe it. His human noticed it immediately, the shift, the softness, the quiet surrender in that tiny frame. And for a moment, the bath itself seemed to pause, as if even the water understood that something important was happening. This wasn't just about getting clean anymore. This was about a frightened animal deciding, for the first time in his short life, that another living creature could be trusted with his safety. He didn't know he was doing anything remarkable. He was just a kitten, tired and warm and finally still. But in that stillness was a kind of courage most people never stop to notice, the courage it takes to let yourself be vulnerable after everything has taught you not to be. The water moved gently around him, rinsing away the last traces of dirt from his fur. His human worked slowly, careful not to disturb the fragile peace that had settled over him. He didn't open his eyes again until the water stopped running. When he did, he blinked slowly, once, twice, the same soft blink cats used to say something words never could. I trust you. I'm not afraid anymore. It was such a quiet moment. No dramatic music, no grand gesture, just a small, clean kitten resting in gentle hands, finally believing that he was safe. And somehow, that quiet was louder than anything else could have been. The water stopped running, and the silence that followed felt different than before. Not tense, not uncertain, just quiet, the kind of quiet that settles in after something hard has finally passed. His human lifted him gently from the sink, careful with every movement, and wrapped him in the towel that had been warming nearby the whole time. The fabric was soft, still holding a little heat, and the moment it touched his damp fur, something in his tiny body seemed to exhale. He didn't fight the towel. He didn't squirm to get free. He simply let himself be wrapped, held, and gently patted dry, his small head poking out from the folds of fabric like he was peeking out from the safest place in the world. His fur, once dull and matted with days of dirt and hardship, was now soft and clean, bright orange, almost glowing under the kitchen light. His whiskers, damp and slightly curled, twitched as his human dabbed gently around his face. He was exhausted. Anyone could see that in the slow blink of his eyes, the way his tiny body sagged with tiredness. But it wasn't the exhaustion of fear. It was the exhaustion that comes after finally letting go of something heavy. For 3 days, he had been surviving in a new world, unsure if the safety he'd been given was real or temporary, unsure if the hands that fed him and sheltered him could be trusted the way the world had never let him trust anyone before. But today, in that small kitchen, during nothing more than an ordinary bath, something had shifted for good. He had let himself be vulnerable, and nothing bad had happened. He had let himself be scared, and still, someone had stayed. Wrapped snugly in the towel, he didn't try to squirm away or hide beneath the counter the way he had those first few days. Instead, he did something he'd never done before. He stayed close, not because he had nowhere else to go, not because he was too tired to move, but because, for the first time since he'd been found shivering behind those trash cans, staying close felt like exactly where he wanted to be. His human settled into a chair, still holding him gently, still murmuring those same soft, steady words he'd been hearing since the water first started running. See, that wasn't so bad. He blinked slowly again, that same quiet gesture, the one that meant more than any sound he could have made. Curled into the warmth of the towel, cradled against a chest that had stayed steady through every trembling second of that bath, the kitten finally let his eyes close for real, not out of fear, not out of the need to hide, just rest, simple, earned, peaceful rest. The bath that was supposed to be terrifying, the running water, the unfamiliar routine, the loss of control over his own small body, had instead become something else entirely. It had become the moment he learned that fear didn't always mean danger, that new things didn't always mean harm, that the hands holding him weren't just capable of feeding him or sheltering him, they were capable of caring for him, gently, patiently, completely. He didn't have the words for gratitude. He didn't understand what trust meant, not the way people did. But somewhere in that small, sleepy body, something had settled into place, a quiet certainty that hadn't existed 3 days ago. I am safe here. I belong here. From that day forward, every time he heard that same voice, every time he felt those same gentle hands, he would remember. Not the fear of the running water, not the trembling uncertainty of the first few moments. He would remember the warmth of the towel, the steadiness of the voice, the safety of being held through something hard. He was just a small, orange kitten who had survived more than any creature his size should have to. But now, wrapped in warmth and finally, truly clean, he was something else too. He was home.